that there are six small mistakes that men tend to make that aren't worth breaking up over. So, is it a red flag or not? Thank you so much for joining us again on Second Act TV. Once again, I want to welcome back Sandy Weiner, the host of Last First Date Radio and the author of Choice Points in Dating. Sandy, thank you for being here again.
Thank you for having me again, Selka.
As you know, Sandy's here all the time. She's an expert in dating and relationships, and that's the hat that we want to put on again today. We talk a lot about red flags, about identifying behaviors. No, that could be a problem. Or could they? And that's the article you wrote, that there are six small mistakes that men tend to make that aren't worth breaking up over. So, is it a red flag or not? I think this is an important conversation because we do tend to maybe misunderstand what they're actually doing and throwing away a great relationship. Do you want to say anything before we get going here, Sandy?
Yeah, I think that we can be a little red flag happy. I know in many of the Facebook groups that I am in that are about relationships, people are like, run, red flag, and they have the little red flag icon. And it could be something not so bad and something that's worth talking about and not running away from it, because you can really just be focused only on finding those red flags when they're not really red flags.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's talk about, things men do, six things that men do that aren't worth breaking up over. Hopefully not anyway. He has trouble, number one. What woman won't say this? He has trouble expressing his feelings.
Yeah, a lot of men were not raised to express their feelings. Neither were women, honestly, but men were raised to just suck it up and buck up and don't cry, don't show your feelings because it's weak. And so we have to understand that if a man is uncomfortable expressing his feelings, that we can be responsible for helping him do that and making a safe space to have him speak up and say what's going on. It's just we have to really educate each other about our emotions and how we communicate. It's such a big issue in relationships.
This is one that I totally understand, that men don't express their feelings. I would never associate that with a reason to break up. So I guess my question to you is, you have these big Facebook groups, you speak with thousands of women at a time. You hear this is something women say, that he won't show his feelings, so I'm breaking up with him.
Yeah, they get very frustrated and feel like they're the only ones carrying the emotional weight. I'm working with a man right now who's in a relationship with a woman who is constantly accusing him of that I'm the one carrying the emotional weight in this relationship, and you don't talk about your feelings, and you're like a narcissist. I mean, we could be calling people names for this, and it's not true. And then the person is going to shut down if you're going to call them a name. So we have to really work on this, and it is frustrating if you're trying to have a conversation and you're the only one who's expressing emotions. It doesn't feel good. But if you tell him you want to talk about something challenging, ask for his feedback, tell him you'd love to hear how he feels about that. Sometimes just asking a man how he thinks about something will get him to tell you how he feels about it.
I like that. I think this is something that women, if this is that prevalent, that absolutely is on us to fix that. This is not something to break over. This is part of growing a relationship, having it blossom. So a good point. Yeah. Here's one that I can identify with maybe a little bit more. You feel he takes you for granted. And a lot of times we created that situation.
Oh, yeah. I had a client many years ago who broke up with a man because she felt that he was taking her for granted. And what she didn't realize was that she never asked him for anything. She assumed so many things about him that she would overgive and overdo, and she'd be the one driving because he had kids and she didn't have kids, so she would drive an hour to his house and never ask him to reciprocate. And she did this with everyone in her life. And so after I worked with her, it was clear that she never had these conversations. She decided to reconnect with him and say, hey, listen, I'm thinking of coming back with new agreements. I want to talk about some of the things that happened in our relationship. And he was like, oh my God, of course I'll drive to you. Of course I'll buy you dinner. Of course I'll buy the gifts for the family. And they're married now, happily married. But if she didn't have that conversation, she could have thrown away a perfectly good man. And I've seen so many women overdo it right away. They're buying gifts and they're making the three-course meals and they're doing all these lovely things, and there's no relationship yet. And they're going, but if he really liked me, why, he wouldn't take me for granted. I'm doing so many nice things for him.
Yeah, I like I said, I can totally identify with that. And I've said in other segments, this is how I was raised. This is what you do. This is what this is how you get a man. So for me, it's almost second nature. So I really want to hear from our guys on this. Have you experienced this? Do you agree with what we're saying here? Because I do think we create that situation. And do you become, just accustomed to something that that's then normal behavior, or what would your advice be? So I look forward to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. He doesn't open up. That's another one, something that women tend to say. Forgive a guy who grunts one word answers to your questions. I like that. Yes. No.
Right. So a lot of men just don't speak as much as women. I have a brother who's like that kind of, yep, right. And women tend to sometimes talk too much. Like they'll go through the story and the connections that they see in the story. And the guy's like, I don't even know what you're talking about anymore. And so again, this is a communication issue. If you think that you're with somebody who's not opening up, for women, we can learn to bottom line our stories and just really get clear about what we're looking for and ask for. Again, it's a two-way street, bottom line. Your stories, don't give him the long answer of like, what did you do today? Well, I got up in the morning, then I had breakfast, then I went to Bloomingdale's, and then I saw a yellow dress, and that reminded me of my friend Nancy, and because she likes yellow. And he's like, what are we talking about? I don't know. What am I supposed to comment on? So he's just,
Yeah. It always amazes me. This is again something that I can't imagine doing. But I see it in women. I see it at, in various gatherings, or if we're with friends or something, where the man will literally just let her talk. We do this. And we do need to become more aware of that. Again, if this hits home for you, maybe look into it a little deeper. I like this one. He doesn't know how to comfort you. That's an important one. This is where I really want the men to listen, because if you can figure this out, you're going to have better relationships.
Well, this one goes to mind reading, I think, a little bit, because I think many of us grew up thinking that if somebody really loves me, they'll know exactly what I'm thinking. They'll know how to help me. They'll know how to give me empathy. They'll know exactly what to say and do. And people need to learn because you need to teach them. Not everybody knows how to be there for you. So some people want to be comforted with a hug. Some people want to be comforted with somebody cooking for them. Everybody is different with what feels like comfort. So when we're upset, we need to be able to express ourselves, or we make up a story that this person is a horrible person and we can break up with them.
Well, and that's what women, we do. And again, I pointed myself. I have stories, I have whole arguments with Paul sometimes. He has no idea that we had it. We do. I don't know why that's a woman thing, but it really is. And it's definitely something to be aware of. And again, for the men listening, if you're able to comfort someone, or at least try, that goes so far, to really solidifying that relationship or making something better that isn't so good at the moment.
Even before we get to the next one, just to ask a question like, how can I support you? What's going on? Tell me more. Simple words, not a whole lot of things to say, but just to know I care. I'm here for you. Tell me what you need.
I like that. Those are easy words. Thank you, Sandy. That's great advice. Great advice. How can I comfort you? What a great question.
Yeah.
Now you just have to just remember that when the time comes.
Yep.
uh, he doesn't listen. We'll go back to this one. Yeah, that one of the biggest issues in relationships is that men and women, well, they accuse each other of not listening, but it's for different reasons.
So a lot of times men are not hearing you because they're in the middle of something and you haven't really gotten their attention. This, I think, is one of the biggest issues with them not listening. If they're in the middle of a task, they are so focused that you could be talking to them and they could even be saying, uh-huh, uh-huh, but they're not hearing you. And so what I always say is get their attention, say their name, make sure they're looking at you, make sure they're hearing you before you start talking at them. That little shift, call their name, eye contact, and make sure that they heard you is a way to get the person's full attention. Now, of course, all these things, if you have done these things and the person continues to do what they do, then that's a whole other issue. And that's probably reason to not stay together.
Or certainly it's a red flag. I mean, it
Mm-hmm.
needs to be addressed even more. And yeah, maybe it is something waving in your face that you don't want to see or that you're excusing. So good point.
Right.
Good point. He shuts down when you're upset. That's another one that's so difficult for me to understand. I think you prefaced one of our other answers here that we want them to intuitively know what to do if they loved us, and that's like the worst assumption ever.
Yeah, so this is really about when you're upset, and I would say you're not saying how you feel in a way that is safe
Mm-hmm.
for a conversation. So maybe you've held everything in for a very long time and then you explode.
Mm-hmm.
That man is probably going to shut down.
Yeah.
I mean, he is going to shut down. He's going to want to walk away. He's going to either do that or he's going to lash out at you.
Mm-hmm.
This is really a lesson in how do we do conflict. And
Mm-hmm.
so if he becomes defensive and shuts down, look at your behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're blaming and shaming and calling names and judging and not getting curious,
Mm-hmm.
and this goes for both sexes,
Mm-hmm.
the other person is going to shut down. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we all have to protect ourselves. It's a natural instinct to
Right.
not want to be spoken to in
Attacked.
that way
Yeah.
because it feels so unsafe and so
Right.
scary. You've got to look at how your actions affect the other person.
Yeah, and you can see how he responds, that he's not just, he leaves you when you're upset. He's terrible. How can I go on like this? And I think one good rule of thumb with defensiveness, right or wrong, whoever gets defensive is reacting to something. So, again, whether you were accused of something you did or didn't do, or whatever the situation is, defensiveness is a reaction. So as you said,
Mhm.
Sandy, see what you did, to cause this, and not necessarily throw away a good relationship. We're starting to come to the end here. How would you like to sum this up? Some really good advice here.
Yeah, I just think we all need to take responsibility for our share
Mm-hmm.
and learn how to communicate better. I mean, that's really the key. And if you are communicating well and you are taking responsibility and both of you are willing
Mm-hmm.
to work on the relationship, then that's fantastic. But sometimes when you're really attracted to a person, you dismiss things that are really red flags
Mm-hmm.
and you're willing to dismiss them because other needs are met and you've got these hormones that are making your head a little bit
Yeah.
fuzzy and so keep your eyes open, especially when you're just starting to date and see if anything shows up and address them right away. I don't think it's ever too early to talk about the things that matter to you, to find out who that person is, to see if you're on the same page in relationship goals and all that stuff. Because we often just dive into these relationships and then we wonder why they're not working.
Mhm.
So don't dismiss somebody for these minor things, but do pay attention if they become bigger and if the person doesn't respond in the way that would work for you. Don't compromise on the things that are really important.
Important to you, and make you feel bad if you're constantly being made to feel like this, as we talked here. Then it's definitely a red flag. But work on it first, and that's I fully agree that a lot of us just we don't recognize it. It's his fault. So good article. It gets you to think, and I'm looking forward to the comments on this. Sandy, thank you again. I always love having you here. I'll link to all of your information to lastfirstdate.com if you want to coach with Sandy directly, to your radio show, and to your book, Choice Points in Dating. Lots of great advice there too. And I look forward to our next talk on Second Act TV.